So obviously, depending on what statistic you look at, in general, it said 1 or 5 or 1 or 6 girls, however, will experience rape or attempted rape in their lifetime. And I believe the numbers are like 1 and 2 for other types of sexual assault, and then for men, it's like 1 in 33. We don't have as good as state-specific data on like any type of thing, and then obviously you're also looking at situations where, like, if you look at like the uniform crime reports, those are only going to be reported crimes, so that's very different from these sort of surveys we do where it's like people will be asked questions and they're not asked, have you ever been raped? They will be asked, have you ever been forced to have sex against your will? And the reason for that is a lot of times survivors do not identify what happens to them as a form of sexual abuse or rape or anything like that. And I think it's also, there's a lot of shame and stigma that goes into that. So that's how we get sort of those numbers that are separate and apart from what happens in the criminal justice system. Now, as far as like what's reported or not, I mean, there's definitely, various numbers because it's also hard to get that kind of data. But in general, we really see where only about 30% of all sexual assault is reported. When I say sexual assault, that's kind of sort of our umbrella term for all types of sexual abuse, or it could be rape, attempted rape, contact that does not involve penetration. So that's sort of like the generic term we use. And like I said, only about 30% of it's reported, and I think now with the Me Too movement and all, there's more recognition of why. I mean, most people don't think that being flashed is a form of sexual violence. They think that's just something normal you would see like in the French Quarter or anything like that, but that actually is a form of sexual violence. And
I think so.
yes. But a lot of people it's become so normalized that
women especially have normalized it.
Right. That it's just not quite considered the same. I mean, a lot of people in the service industry are only now recognizing that when their butts are hit, that is a form of sexual violence. Well, I think it depends on the context in which it comes up to where, I either am spouting out like the statistics about it, or it just depends on how it is approached. But a lot of times when it comes up in conversations, it comes up in the sense of, well, this could be fake, this could be false, and it could ruin somebody's life. We need to investigate. And it's like, we need to investigate just like any other reported crime. We let the facts lead to, conclusions. And the truth is, a lot of times that some form of sexual abuse happens, but because of our great country, that we do have laws to protect, really innocent people, that we require beyond a reasonable doubt. We require probable cause to make an arrest. And even if we don't meet those burdens, doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means that we couldn't. Statistically, though, you'll hear, in my experience, certain people will say, oh, well, false reports are so high or anything like that, and it's like that's the perception. Statistically, it's really only 2 to 5%, and 5% is actually on the high end because you have to have something that is provably false. Does it happen? Yes, it does. Of course, media sensationalizes things, but also statistically, men are more likely to be sexually abused than to be falsely accused. And that's one thing that really kind of hits on people is that, so it's like, especially, I have 2 sons, and people say all the time, well, what if one day when they're older, they're accused? And it's like, that is hard, but we have to accept that people we love, good people, do sometimes do bad things. And I think that when we accept that, then we're actually doing the things we need to sort of prevent it. I'm raising my children now, very young, about consent. Obviously, I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about how if somebody doesn't want to share their toys with you, like different things, they are not required to give hugs or kisses to their grandparents, even though it may hurt the mom's feelings. But it teaches them that their body is their own and that they are not forced to share it with anybody. And I think in turn that creates a message that they can't assume that anybody else's body is theirs as they grow older. And so that's sort of the things that, I think that to be honest, Louisiana does a disservice to our children, to people, because we're not teaching these things. And then kind of society leads people to believe that we are entitled to other people, whether it's the glamorization of things or, you know, I mean, how many stories out there, I know it seems so silly, but like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, these were two women that were passed out, and like we teach everyone, well, your Prince Charming will come and wake you up while you're sleeping, which, you know, you can't even, and so I mean, I know it seems so crazy, like, yes, that's a fairy tale, but it starts out like that, you know, and we just kind of assume certain things. It's a turnoff if you ask somebody, you know, if they're okay with you kissing them, things like that. So I think we're also not teaching kids, because we don't teach sex education. A lot of people think that sex education means we're going to teach kids how to have sex. It actually means you're going to teach kids appropriate body parts, a good touch, bad touch, you know, so that way you can really, like, early on prevent sexual abuse and also prevent it from happening to others. So.